Good evening, welcome to the last tackle here on the Sportsman Rugby League. Loads to get through as ever, and who better to have in the studio to go through it than Eddie Hemmings and Kevin Brown. And gents, there is only one place to start. We have a new name at the top of the all-time Betfred Super League try scorer charts. Eddie, you'd have called a fair few of these tries over the years. How do you begin to sum up Ryan Hall?
Well, he's a great player, isn't he? That's what you have to say first of all. I mean, the size of him as well now, he sometimes carries the ball forward like a forward, and he runs like the wind when he has the ball in his hand. He's waited a while, hasn't he, to pick up this accolade of being the Super League top try scorer. He got 2 in the last 10 minutes or so at the weekend. But delighted for him. I mean, he's a great bloke. He plays the game well. He plays with heart and spirit, and he never seems to get into much trouble on the field. I think maybe we just put it slightly into a bit of context. I mean, this is Super League all-time record try scorer, and a lot of statisticians and historians of the game will remember a fellow called Brian Bevan. He played for Warrington, he played for Blackpool Borough. He scored 670 tries in his career. That puts it into some sort of perspective. If Ryan is still playing when he's 75, he'll probably reach that total of tries. But fantastic for him. And let's also not forget Josh Charnley is coming up on the rails behind him. You know, he's, I think, got 239. So it's good. It's tremendous. And well done. Well done to Ryan Hall. He's waited a couple of weeks, as I say, to get this. I think it was May when he last scored. And he puts down his 2 best tries, as one in the grand final and the one at Huddersfield when that helicopter was going across the Pennines, turning round and going to Wigan, coming back and coming to Huddersfield when Leeds won the League Leaders' Shield. Delighted for him, tremendous.
Yeah, that one at Huddersfield especially will go down in history. Kev, how impressive is the longevity? Because, as Eddie rightfully says, a very physical player, which will take a toll on his body, but also, he used to forget, he had a spell out of Super League as well. He went to the NRL for 2-3 years, came back and has still done this.
Well, for me, he's the best. He's the best that I've seen. He's the best I've played with and against. And what Ryan Hall does, you could be forgiven for thinking he's just a try scorer when he scores 248 tries in Super League. You could think, oh, he's a good finisher, but he's much, much more than that. Even at the weekend, at the age he is now, he was still the first one chasing back when Easton Masters scored, pushing him into the corner. And what he brings, I completely agree with Eddie, he is a forward on the flank where he comes inside, he does all the hard work, and his longevity is something we don't normally see with wingers because you do lose your pace, but Ryan's still got the pace, the power, and probably what every club wants is a Ryan Hall in the team, not just because what he brings on the field, but what he brings, the calmness, the maturity off the field too. He's a great player, great person, and I'm so pleased for him.
And let's not forget he also has scored 39 tries, I believe, for England in 40 internationals. Incredible. The stats are fantastic.
His England record especially is superb. As you say, Kev, a really, really nice guy. Part of the whole KR team, Kev, currently sat 3rd place in the table. I know I've probably asked you this question a couple of times this season, but they're genuine contenders, aren't they?
They are, and I think you can see how much confidence they've got with the disappointment when they got knocked out of the Challenge Cup, and you know, that really hurt Willie Peters and his team, and now they're focused solely and sat 3rd. I think they're really well placed for a tilt at the second half of the season. I think, you know, the right edge has been questioned a couple of times, but I thought the weekend against Huddersfield, Tyrone May and Peter Iku in particular looked sensational. I really do think that the balance of that side is a dangerous one for all the top teams come the end of the year.
Eddie, Ryan Hall, of course, heading back to Headingley next season, but in the here and now, some challenging times at the Leeds Rhinos. Obviously, an emotional time for obvious reasons regarding Rob, but in the same week that Ian Blease has been brought in as the new sporting director, they became the 2nd team to lose to Hull FC this season, which isn't a record that they'd have wanted to pick up. How much of a decision, how much of a task does Ian Blease have in his hands in the current light?
Well, he said, didn't he, on his appointment as the sporting director at Headingley, that he would come in, would assess what's going right and what's going wrong. And sad to say at the moment, a lot is going wrong on the pitch. I mean, they were 2nd best from start to finish at the weekend. And I mean, the whole Leeds fixture has always got a little bit about it. You know, there's a lot of rivalry between those two clubs anyway. There is historically. But I mean, I sat here last week and I thought to myself, and I did say that Hull have been woeful this year, and they have, but they weren't woeful at the weekend. They really did step up a gear, and they completely outplayed the Leeds Rhinos. I think Ian Blease is going to take his time. I think he's going to have a look and see, because as he said, what's going right, what's going wrong. I think it's a very challenging time at the moment for Rohan Smith. I really do, because his team are underperforming. They haven't really played well for 2 years. They underperformed desperately last year as well. And, you know, you have to say, well, who else is out there? I know which coaches are available and who's out there and who would do a better job than Rohan Smith. But I think Rohan and his coaching staff have got to suddenly take stock of themselves, take stock of what they've got on the field, and they've got to try and get themselves into a playoff place at least this year.
But this is the thing, and this is why it's a slightly bizarre situation, I think, Kev. You'll obviously know Bleasy well from your time at Salford, but Leeds are only 2 points outside the playoffs. Very much the maths suggests that this season is salvageable. He'll obviously be taking a much more wider view on things. How does he get that balance right of you know, trying to get something out of this season, but also making the decisions that are going to be the best ones 18 months, 2 years further down the line?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think what Ian is a great leader, and he's calm and composed. He won't go in and act on emotion. But clearly, even though you are right, the season is salvageable. They're only just sat outside. It's just not good enough at the moment for Leeds. They've lost to Hull. They've been playing poor. The expectation at Leeds is always high, but on the back of some sensational transfers and some big money moves in the off-season, we all expected Leeds to be genuine contenders, and they're far from it at the minute. So I think what Ian will do, he will take stock and he'll look around. But I don't think there's too much to change to have an impact quite quickly. I think if you got the confidence in the group, sometimes you lose the group and you hear that term quite a lot. Has he lost the group? Well, for me, it just looks like they're that underconfident. Whatever Rowan says at the moment, it might fall on deaf ears. So sometimes a break, if we can get a good response this week, I know that they're expecting a massive crowd. If they can get a good response and a break, well, that might be enough just to get the confidence back. But it's going to take a lot for me to turn this season round, and it might be that the head coach needs changing.
At the club that Ian Blease left, of course, Salford are having another really strong season. A scalp against Warrington at the weekend, handed up 2 debuts who both look strong. How do they keep doing it on supposedly, a shoestring budget? Yeah,
well, the recruitment's savvy, and I think Ian Blease, who we've just been speaking about, is a massive part of that. They don't have lots of finances like other clubs, but what they do is they're very diligent, and when they go into the market, and I think everyone who goes there performs better, even if you often say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But in Mark Sneyd, he's playing as good as I've ever seen him play under Paul Rowley, and he was the star at the weekend against Warrington once again. So I think what they do is they punch above the weight because they all expect that of each other. They go there and have fun, and sometimes I think you can underestimate how much fun brings the best out in you. But Paul Rowley needs a massive pat on the back too. I've worked with Paul. I know how good he is, not only in terms of the recruitment, but getting the players to play better than they ever have done in their career.
Eddie, they beat the Warrington side, obviously still licking their wounds from Wembley defeat. How important is this couple of weeks for the Wolves? Because they've done a lot of good work early on in the season. We can see what Sam Burgess has done. Obviously made a cup final in his first 6 months at the club. It feels like a really crucial time, though, that they don't let that defeat kind of derail their season. They can get back on the horse and have a crack at the playoffs and beyond.
Very much so. I mean, yes, they were poor against Salford. Put it down to a cup hangover, if you like. I'm sure, despite the fact that they lost, there was a little bit of celebration because they actually got to Wembley in the first place, and there was a bit of commiserations and let's all get together and regender all the community spirit within the club. But he is facing now his first crisis, Sam Burgess, since arriving. 3 straight defeats. Wigan twice. One with all the kids playing, 18, 19 at home. A lot of people in Warrington are saying he should have played the kids at Wembley now, but hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it, Then they lose at Wembley. Then they lost at the weekend. They were poor against Salford. and the man you've mentioned, Mark Sneyd, you know, he's top of the Man of Steel chart at the moment, and that speaks volumes for him. I've always been a great admirer of him ever since he was kicking the goals. You know, and everyone shouted "Sneyd" in the background. You know,
he's always been a good kicker, hasn't he?
He has, and he's not just an aerial kicker. He nicks it through now on the deck, and he creates things for everybody around him. I think he's a great player. I'm not saying Warrington need a Mark Sneyd. They probably think they've got him there. But I do believe that this is a crucial time for Sam. I'm sure he'll come out of it, because if you look at the fixture list, funny enough, they're at Hull, aren't they, this weekend? Oh dear, Hollis are starting to hit the straps, perhaps. Then they've got, I think, a couple of home games, but then coming up large on the horizon is Saints and Wigan away. And if you remember last year, 2023, 8 at the start of the season, Saints and Wigan, and that's when the wheels fell off.
Well, you've both mentioned Mark Sneyd in reference there. He's now top of the Man of Steel charts, standalone. What a story that would be if you kept that up for the rest of the year. We'll just take a quick look at the rest of the results from the weekend. Wigan squeezed past Castleford at the Jungle. I know a lot of people would have looked at that on paper and expected a much bigger win, but Wigan are the only club in the last 10 years who have managed to win the game after winning the cup final. So that shows you how difficult that is to do. And they have an opportunity to do something remarkable, Eddie. They've got all 4 trophies in their possession as it stands, but to do that in the same calendar year would be quite something, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it just? I mean, we sat here and Chris Radlinski was the guest last week, and he referenced the fact that St Helens had won 4 in a row. They looked at themselves at Wigan and said, look, we've got to do better. So in other words, the fact that Saints were, you know, kings of the hill for 4 years on the run has upset people at Wigan, and they want to do better, and they want to now emulate that, and if possible, even go a couple of seasons further on than that. They're an outstanding club. They've got an outstanding coach, a great CEO, as we saw last week, coaching staff in place, Bevan French in place for the next 5 years. They're the team now to beat, no question about that. Saints for the last 4 years, Wigan under Matty Peat have been transformed. Sensational. And great on defence, not only just scoring tries, the defence at Wembley, well, that won them the Challenge Cup, didn't it? When Warrington showed a little bit that perhaps they could come back into the match, they just snuffed them out, kept them away. Great club, great side.
I think the fact that they're able to do what they did before, and they snuck a win at Warrington against the kids, but they had enough in them to get the job done. And then after the cup final, with the emotion that went, into that, to get a win when they've not played at the best, they've swapped the team a little bit. I think that shows now that they've got that character when needed. When they're not performing great, they can win the games.
St Helens, of course, may still have something to say about all of this. They ran out to a big score win against London at the weekend. But another club that I just want to give a reference to, Lee, keeping Catalans triless in Catalans. That it shouldn't be underestimated, Kev.
No, well, they've done that twice this year, haven't they? They've done the double, and they've done the double without Catalans scoring a point. Starting to get a little bit worried about Catalans. They started like an house on fire, and they were at the top of the table. Looked really, really strong at home, and I think is that 5 out of 6 games they've lost now. So, yeah, they're another team that are in real need of, a big win. I think they're up against Huddersfield at home this week. So, both them sides need a win desperately. But, Catalans, for me, are a little bit worried at the minute how the form's going.
Yeah, interesting one, Eddie. The Dragons, obviously grand finalists last year, and I don't know if there was a little bit of a feeling at the time, with obviously some big names moving on, retiring, that was the opportunity to get it done, and this might be a little bit of a rebuild. But they're obviously not gone. They're very much in the mix, but it feels less certain for them than it has done for the last 2 or 3 years.
It does, and I think that they've had their fair share, in fact probably more than their fair share of injuries, haven't they? They have been disrupted a lot this year of the Catalan Dragons. I was surprised, I must say, that Lee went there and won. I was surprised about that, but in many ways I look back and I think, well, maybe not, because Lee have got such fighting spirit amongst them as well, and in players like Edwin Apapi, he's absolutely crucial to them, as is Lachlan Lamb. Catalan is a slight worry at the moment, but I think they've got enough to come back. I mean, we're entering the height of summer, which generally in the south of France means that the players and the teams that go there struggle a little bit in terms of the temperature on the field. But Lee took 1,800 fans with them last weekend. And it must have felt like a home game to the Lee Leopards. And just a word of caution for Leeds, who of course are coming back this week to Headingley after Rob, and I'm sure the emotion of Rob Burrows passing was partly responsible for their performance last week. They're coming back again. There's another massive tribute to Rob, and rightly so. The one team I think that you don't want to turn up on a day like this at the moment is Lee. You know, they've something special at Lee. There's no doubt about that in my mind. Look at the season they had last year, and they've got to go to. And
the table tells a lie, really, doesn't it?
Does.
They lost so many players at the start of the year.
Yeah, I'm going to say their injuries have cost them.
So
well, it
now
almost
they're
felt,
in
didn't it?
danger
Because last season the thing about Lee was they, whether you call it luck, squad management, whatever, they had a very low injury season, and it felt like kind of all that negative karma got repaid in the first 6-8 weeks of this year. They seem to get a year's worth of injuries. They're a real jack in the box, unpredictable, Kev.
They are. If they can sneak into the top six, I think they'll do some real damage. And I agree with what Eddie says. I think, you know, them turning up to Leeds, they're going to go there ready to play. I watched the game, and you know they won 10 points to 2, but they left a few out there as well. There was a couple of times that I think Kai O'Donnell dropped the ball over the line from a great break by Lachlan Lamb. I just think they'll go there rubbing their hands together in front of 30,000, thinking, this is a party that we can spoil, and they'll go there with a leopard print on, with the chests out, and looking to play.
You would hope that Leeds would do the same, because they want to remember the man. They want to remember Rob Burrow for what he was. But Lee could go and cause them a few problems. I would hope that Leeds would try and give their supporters and Rob the match that they deserve. We hoped that Wembley would be a match that Rob deserved. It didn't quite happen because Wigan was so dominant and Warrington just didn't turn up. Maybe this is Leeds' moment to just actually say, hey, never mind about Lee, never mind about Hull Kingston Rovers, we're still in this mix.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one, that one. We'll come into it in a bit more depth in a minute. That's last week's Betfred Super League fixtures in the books. We'll look ahead to the weekend coming up shortly. But right here on the Sportsman on Sunday, we've got live action from Betfred League One as we continue to bring you the coverage of that title race. Oldham, of course, sitting pretty at the top, but Keighley very much on their heels. Join us Sunday afternoon, 3 o'clock for that one from Derwent Park in Workington. Always a good place to go and watch your rugby league, a tough place for the away side. So it won't be easy for Oldham, but join us for that one, see if they can keep themselves at the top of the Betfred League One table. As I say, that's this weekend. And of course, last week we got confirmation that this season is just going to be a little bit longer.
The words, my strength is at its peak. You would not deny them that, would you? Let's go. Brilliant ball. Doggy's on his way. Absolutely spectacular. Because Luhai's dancing now. Oh, he's found the gap. Puts it back on the inside. Paolo spins it away. Luhai bats it on. Brighton will finish. That is incredible. Flags flying of these two nations all around the stadium. Through the first line, and through the second, and through the third, and England on the try. Oh, eyes up rugby league from Lingy Shah. Williams with a kick to the corner, here they go, Mickinson. He pops it over the top, Lafay's got the football, and Lafay's got the try.
Revenge is a dish, best served cold.
Yeah, what a series this will be. England versus Samoa, 2 games, of course, at the end of the season. Finally confirmed last week after a lot of to and froing about whether it was going to happen. Kev, obviously a proud England international. A good series, this. A real mouthwater, as we've seen there. It's very much repeat or revenge, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Well, it's 1-1, isn't it, after the first game of the World Cup?
It's 1-1, and if I know Sean Wayne, he'll be already banging his head against the wall saying it's time for revenge. I think it hurt every Englishman when we got knocked out of the World Cup. And they'll have to be very, very good if they want to beat this Samoa side. I always love playing against the Pacific nations. They love playing for the country. They love wearing that badge. And one thing you can guarantee is there's going to be fireworks. Whoever carries that first kick-off, whether it's Samoa or England, expect a big collision. So I can't wait for that one.
Eddie, you were one of Rugby League's great salesmen, of course, working for Sky. It wouldn't have been very difficult. The 2 lineups are going to be pretty star-studded, these 2 games.
Very much so, and as you say, what happened in the World Cup set it up really, really nicely, and it is 1-1. We hammered them in the first match in the World Cup, and then we lost in the semi-final. Remember, there were quite a few Penrith players in the Samoan lineup for the first game, and they'd been celebrating their premiership in Australia for quite a bit of time before they got over here for the World Cup. Look, any international is worth going to see. One of the big fears that Steve-O and I have both got at the moment is that the state of origin in Australia is up there, and the International Rugby League in Australia is down there, probably because the Australians are so dominant in it. We need things like England, Samoa, great 2 matches to prove that international football is alive and well. And please, let's hope it's a great series. Let's hope we get some great crowds at the 2 venues, and that England, show their true colours, because I'm sure they can beat them over the 2 games. I'm really convinced of that. And of course, we also have the England-France match coming up in a week or two's time. So let's wave the flag for International Rugby League. It's alive and well, but we all thought it was dead and buried.
Well, one man is going to be very busy, as you mentioned, over the next week and a half, and then, of course, in October for this series, England head coach Shaun Wane. Let's hear from him now. Of course, I know you just said that you don't like dwelling on things, but has it got a little bit of a feel of a revenge mission, this one?
Yeah, a little bit, no doubt about that. And I don't think I've ever felt as sad or been as hurt as that game at the end, how it ended. They were the best team, we were poor. No excuse from us, but that took a lot of getting over. I'm very much what's next, and I don't dwell on things, but Christ, I dwelled on that. It was tough to get over, and it still is, because we just undersold ourselves. I weren't good enough, the players weren't good enough. In the most important game of my career. And so there's been a lot of soul searching, me looking at what I did was the first major thing we did. So to get them in this game, there will be, there's no denying it, there will be an element of, that team hurt us. They beat us fair and square. I don't know if we got a bit confident after the first game against them in the World Cup, but I knew they'd come back. There were too many good players in that team, and it bit us in the end.
Yep, time for revenge, says Shaun Wane. An absolute belter of a series coming up at the end of the year. Of course, there's a real rivalry now between England and Samoa after that World Cup, so plenty in store then. But before then, of course, we've got the road to Old Trafford, and we're back on it at the weekend with a full menu of Betfred Super League fixtures. Starting off with an interesting one, actually. Thursday night, Castleford Tigers, Hull Kingston Rovers, Kev, and Cass got close against Wigan, closer than a lot of people thought they would. Hull KR have spoken about doing really well in 3rd position, but there'll be a lot of positives, flying around the Cass dressing room this week.
Yeah, and with Danny Maguire in there, he'll know, Hull KR inside out, being there as a player and as a coach. So I think they'll be quite confident, Cass, but if Hull KR can produce the level of performance that we've seen so far this season and last weekend against Huddersfield, I think they'll just have too much class in attack with Mikey Lewis, Niall Evans, Petereku and Tyrone May. I just think them 4 in particular are really red hot at the moment. I think they'll be too good for the Tigers.
The results speak for themselves, Eddie, but Hull KR, what they have become this year, is a really fun team to watch play rugby league as well. This feels like there could be quite a lot of entertainment on display.
Oh, I would think so. I mean, I don't think Castleford will get carried away by the closeness of the result against Wigan last week, because it was probably a hangover from Wembley. But, fair play to them. They really did get close. They gave them a good run for the money. Hull Kingston Rovers, great to watch. All the time, great to watch. Leading try scorer, Ryan Hall, the guys that Kev's mentioned. And Willie Peters and his coaching staff have done a remarkable job. I think I can't see Castleford getting past Hull Kingston Rovers, not the way they're playing at the moment. And you look at the top of the table, I don't think there's going to be much movement at the end of this weekend. I really don't.
We've spoken about this next game, Leeds Rhinos at Lee Leopards, in some depth already. It's going to be a hugely emotional night at Headingley for reasons, as we know. The first home game since Rob's passing, and knowing the Leeds club, they will recognise that in the right way. They're very good at doing that kind of thing. They have been throughout this whole process. But there's a big job to do on the pitch as well, Eddie.
There is a big job to do on the pitch, and the emotion will play a part in that. I am sure. I mean, the game had 6 days to try and pay tribute to Rob Burrow leading up to Wembley, and I thought they did it magnificently. Leeds have had a fortnight now to plan this, and it will be a celebration of Rob's life and career, I am sure, tinged with a lot of sadness, because we said last week we've lost an icon and a legend. So Leeds will come in on an absolute wave of emotion, I'm sure. But as we've already alluded to, Lee, they will try if they can to put the blinkers on and keep away from all that. That should be an absolute cracker of a game, I think. I really do.
Yeah, strange one, Kev, because as we've spoken about the emotion of it, there are emotional games in rugby league, but I sense not quite like this one for a long time for both sets of players. But it goes one of two ways. Leeds either use it as inspiration or it weighs heavy on them. Which way do you see it going?
Well, I think the start of the game's crucial. The first 10 minutes, and sometimes it can be a bit of luck, but I think the emotion can go two ways. It can sometimes help you, but it can also hinder you. I think confidence is the big thing. They need that emotion to give them confidence, but they also need to start the game as fast as they've probably started all season, because if they don't, Lee will be out the traps and they'll be trying to do an absolute ambush on them. They'll be speaking about it now, won't they? We go in there, it's siege mentality. Everyone's expecting Leeds to win. The emotion around Rob, well, it's their job as professional rugby league players to go there and put the best performance on. And I think if you take everything away, Lewis, I think if both teams play like they have done consistently, I think Lee win this game.
Moving on, Wigan, London, Eddie, very difficult to see past a Wigan rout in this one.
No, absolutely not. No, I mean, London were doomed from the first game of the season. Before the season started, they gained promotion against Toulouse, and within days they're told they're not going to be here in 2025. How much disillusionment must there be amongst the London Broncos? I mean, Mike Eccles, is doing a fantastic job down there. He's done a great job to get one win, but he ain't going to get his second win at Wigan this weekend. There's no question about that. Wigan will march on. And as I say, looking at the table, Saints, Wigan, Hull Kingston Rovers, I think the top three will stay exactly the same after this weekend.
Hull FC back in the winner's circle after a while. Kev, can they stay there, Warrington?
Well, it's a free hit again this week. No one's expecting them to win, but Warrington are, they've lost 3 games on the bounce, and I know there's factors that have led, they had the kids out and then they're off the back of a Wembley, but it's still 3 games they've lost, and in the back of their heads now they'll be thinking, we have got to win this game. There's a bit of pressure on this. Where at Hull, they'll have had a week like they've not had for a long time, where with smiles on their faces, they're walking around, they'll be patting each other on the back because they've just beat Leeds. So this is not a gimme. I know, the previous fixture, I think Wigan, it's just a matter of how many, not if. But this game, I believe, again, this could be a bit of a banana skin for Sam Burgess, and he'll be leading his team there saying, we need to start this, we need to be professional and do all the little things and be patient if they want to win this game.
How does Sam Burgess approach this, Eddie?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, he gives the impression that he isn't a panicker. He's talked, like saying, Wembley, okay, there were, I think, 12 players that didn't have any final experience. That will help them moving forward when they get to the next one. Then they got the Salford defeat at home last week, which was a bit of a surprise. I mean, let's be fair. Salford playing well. Mark Sneed we've mentioned. Paul Rowley we've mentioned. But for Salford to go to Warrington and win so easily was a little bit of a surprise. Sam, I think, I'm sure he will say, look, it's just part of the process now we're going through, and it will test their mental ability. It will test their playing ability. He'll try and play it cool. I mean, he's a bit like Matty Pete. He doesn't show his emotion in front of the cameras. I'm sure he does in the dressing room. He would have had a right go, I'm sure, at half time last week. I think that he just says, look, let's get back on the horse. Let's get back to what we were doing so well earlier on in the season. You're all good players. Go out there and prove to me and prove to the rest of the world that that's exactly what you are.
Right, gents, we are quickly running out of time. Very quickly, Kev, Huddersfield have already been to Catalans and won this season. Did they do it again?
No, I think Catalans win this game just purely because of the home advantage. 2 teams underconfident, but I think the Dragons will get this job done.
Eddie, Salford took the spoils, memorable night at a totally wicked stadium earlier in the season. Repeat or revenge?
I wouldn't like to back either way on this one. Salford will be ready for them. Saints, though, going so well, sitting top of the table. But Salford, fifth themselves. They know that the chance is there. I think that could be the match of the weekend. That could go either way.
Well, gents, thank you for joining us. Kev, I've not seen you since Wembley. Your lad, of course, lighting it up, length of the field. Jealous?
Very jealous. I've been looking for his medal all week, but I can't find it. He's hid it well.
Does he know any good agents? Gents, a pleasure as ever. Don't forget, of course, live Rugby League here on the Sportsman on Sunday. Betfred League One very much on in the title race in that competition. For join us as Oldham look to keep their place at the top of the table against Warrington. And, of course, we'll be back next Wednesday, as ever, with the last tackle. We'll see you then.